Good morning. I'm Leslie, and I'm going to be teaching yoga today. It will be a pretty gentle class. Um, so if you showed up today, thank you so much for joining. If you enjoy the class and would like to come back and try my class again, I teach this class every Thursday. And other than that, we'll just jump in and get started because it's 10 o'clock. So we'll come to a seated position on our mat or wherever you can sit today. And we'll just start to check in with our mind and our body and our attitude this morning. Just noticing what we feel like today, not really trying to necessarily change anything or add anything or fix anything. Just noticing what's going on. And eventually we'll start to bring our attention just to our breath. Maybe you take your hands to your chest or to your stomach. Or just somewhere that helps you pay attention to your inhales and your exhales. And we'll start to lift our head up towards the sky. We'll start to lift the shoulders up and back. And we'll start to let the chest and the stomach fill more and more with air as we inhale. We'll start to feel our body's weight sink down into the ground. Still breathing slowly. We'll start to check in again with the quality of our thoughts and our attitude and our body. Just noticing what's going on, noticing how we feel this morning. And then we'll just take a few really, really big inhales and exhales. Allowing the body to grow very full, grow larger on the inhales. And on the exhales, allowing the body to fully empty of air. We'll eventually open the eyes, take our hands down to the mat, pressing the hips into the mat, pressing the hands into the mat, lifting the head and the chest and the shoulders up. We'll open the eyes, take a deep breath in and out. And one more time, just noticing the quality of our thoughts quality of our bodies, what they feel like, what our attitude is like today. And then we'll start to come into some movement. We'll start with our head, dropping the head over to one side, letting it roll to the opposite side. Start to make circles with our neck. Going really slowly at first, and eventually letting the head drop all the way around, making complete circles with the neck. And making sure to do this in both directions. Eventually slowing down, coming to a stop. Taking a big breath in and out, you stop breathing. Remember to continue to breathe. We'll start to make circles with our shoulders. So bringing the shoulders up towards the ears, letting them drop down the back. Going slowly at first, being careful. Might feel nice to do one shoulder at a time. And whenever you've done in one direction, going in the opposite direction. And you're sending the shoulders back, try sending them forward now. And slowing that motion down. Taking a moment to breathe in and out. We'll bring our hands either to the thighs or to the ground, and we'll start to make circles out of our hips. So letting the hips be planted on the ground firmly and letting the top half of the body deep movement. Letting the spine be nice and long in this motion. Going in both directions. Eventually slowing down and coming to a stop. We'll sit up tall and we'll come into cat and cow, but in a seated position still. So as we inhale, You can keep the hands on the thighs, on the mat, or you can incorporate the hands with this movement. I'll show you what it looks like with the hands. So as we inhale, we'll come into cat pose, or cow pose with the spine, bringing the hands out to the side. As we exhale, curving the spine, letting the head drop, and letting the elbows reach in as the palms come together. Inhaling, cow pose, exhaling for cat pose. And if the arms get tired, you can bring them down, but continue to pose. We'll come to a stop. Take a nice tall seated position one more time. We'll reach the arms all the way up overhead, reaching out through the fingertips. We'll take an inhale, and on the exhale, we'll fold forward over the legs. Continuing with the breath here. Relaxing the head and relaxing the neck. And we'll eventually allow ourselves to come all the way forward, changing the legs into child's pose. So transitioning to child's pose however you need to, however is easiest. So toes are together, knees are apart, and the top half of the body is down on the mat. Take an inhale here, and on the exhale we'll walk the hands over to our left side. And we'll walk the hands back to center, breathing here, moving the hands over to the right side, sending the hips back. And walking the hands back to the center. We'll press into the hands and walk ourselves up so that we're seated on our heels. If this doesn't feel good, you can sit in between the heels. You can come up onto your knees. and find something to sit on. And from here we'll take the wrists, take the hands, and interlace our fingers to make circles with the wrists, or figure eights, or whatever your hands happen to make. But we'll pick one direction and stick with that direction for a while, circling the wrists. And eventually taking the wrists in the opposite direction. It'd be easier to go in one direction than the other. And maybe even giving the wrists some movement separately. The fingers and the hands. Anything that you've done in one direction, try to do in the other direction. Eventually come to a stop. And we'll make our way into downward facing dog. Coming forward onto the hands. Coming onto the feet. And pressing the hips up and backwards. So maybe you keep a bend in your knees or a bend in your elbows for now. And try to find some movement in the legs. Maybe bend one knee at a time. And we'll find some stillness here. Just holding the pose for a few breaths and stretching out the muscles in the back of the legs. Letting the head and the neck relax. We'll eventually come down into table pose, so letting the knees come back down. We'll come into cat and cow in table pose. So inhaling, lifting the head, pressing hands and feet into the mat. And exhaling, looking down, curving the spine, letting the tailbone drop. And continuing with that motion, going slowly at first. Eventually, maybe going faster, maybe allowing more of your spine to move around. And making any other motions in the spine that will feel good before we come to stillness. And slowing down. We're going eventually coming to a stop. So still in table pose. We'll press the hands into the mat, and we'll take the right leg off of the mat. We'll take the left leg off of the mat, and you can keep a bend in the knee. We'll just start to make circles with that leg out of our hip. So sending the leg back and around, bringing it back forward. Eventually going in the opposite direction. Eventually slowing down. We'll let that knee hover over the mat. We'll bring it in, almost like it could come forward towards the chin. And our spine will do sort of like a cat pose, with that knee still hovering. We'll send the knee out, we'll send the leg out and back. So stretching the left foot towards the back of the room. Eventually letting it touch the ground, keeping the left leg long. We'll start to find some movement with the toes touching the ground. Going slowly, being careful. Eventually lifting the leg off the ground, allowing the left leg to cross over the right leg. Keeping our breath steady here. Eventually allowing the left leg to come out to our left. And we'll walk our hands over to our right. And we'll end up here in some variation of a side plank. So it doesn't particularly matter what the pose you end up in looks like. Just finding some variation of a side balancing pose. Finding some stillness and some stability in that pose. We'll take one more big breath here, and we'll allow ourselves to come back down, and we'll find table pose again. Now working with our right leg. We'll bring the right knee up off the mat, and we'll start to make circles out of the right hip. And eventually changing directions. If you're feeling bored, you can always try this with the opposite hand off the mat. Eventually, slowing that leg down, hugging the right knee in, letting the head drop, sending the right knee back behind you, stretching out through the back of the right leg. Taking a few breaths here as we wake up the muscles in the back of that leg. We'll eventually send that leg the right leg over the left. Stretching out on the right side of the body. And eventually, the right leg will come over and out to the right. And we'll walk our hands to the left. And we'll come into side plank variation on this side now. Eventually allowing the hands to come back to the mat. Back in the table pose. We'll bring the right hand to the center of our body. That'll allow the left hand to rise up over the head. Eventually, we'll bring the left hand back down. And we'll come into that same motion on the right side. So, alternating from left to right. And the next time that the left arm is raised, allow it to drop very slowly, and we'll thread it underneath the right arm. Taking a breath in, we'll slowly bring the arm back out, back up into the air, and allowing it to drop back onto the mat. And we'll take the opposite arm up over the head, and we'll thread that arm underneath the left arm. And on the next inhale, bring that right arm back out. And eventually, allowing ourselves to drop back down into child's pose. Palms flat on the mat. Torso relaxed onto the mat. Knees apart, toes together. And we'll come up partially, pressing our hands into the mat. And we'll find our way back into downward facing dog. Again, finding some motion in the legs and in the feet. Letting the head and the neck relax. Reaching up and back with the hips. Eventually finding some stillness. We'll transition into a forward fold. Letting the head hang down. Not doing any work with the neck or the shoulders. We'll take the hands to the hips. We'll come to a flat back, reaching out through the crown of the head so the back is parallel with the ground. We'll take an inhale, and we'll come all the way up. And taking your time, re-establishing your balance and your equilibrium because you were upside down for a while. And eventually, we'll come into motion with empty coat sleeves. So your legs can be about shoulders width apart. And we're moving our torso from one side to the other. So there's a very small twist in the spine. And maybe as you turn to one side, the opposite foot comes off the ground a little bit. And maybe eventually you start to make fists with the hands and allow them to make contact with your body. So your fists are hitting your body, but it's a gentle massage. Take a few more moments to go a little faster, to put a little more energy into our motion. Press into the ground a little harder, stand up a little taller. We're still not really doing any work with the arms, we're still letting the torso carry the arms. We're just taking a moment to speed up and make the motion a little more intense. And we'll start to slow back down, releasing the hands, coming to a stop. We'll take the legs even wider apart, put a bend in the knees, and the feet can point out to either corner of whatever room you're in. And we'll start to straighten one leg and then the opposite leg. Taking the hands from one bent knee to the other bent knee. And you might just keep your hands on one on either side. Eventually, once your hips feel a little less tense, it might feel good to take the hands down to the mat or down to the ground as you're doing this motion. Still straightening one leg and then the other. We'll eventually come back up or slow down whatever motion you were just doing. Eventually we'll come into 5-pointed star, both hands reaching up and out to either side, both feet pointing out to either side, lifting up the chest, lifting up the head, pressing the feet down into the ground, and reaching out through the fingertips. And from here we'll sink down into goddess pose, so bending the knees, bending the elbows, letting the hips drop down. Just holding here, being still. And pressing back out to 5-pointed star. Taking up a lot of space. And coming back down into goddess pose. We'll go a little faster next, and we'll try to match the motions up with our breath. So maybe you take a big breath in here in goddess pose, tightening up the core, tightening up the arms and legs and fingertips and toes. And maybe on the exhale, pressing out through the feet and hands, getting really, really big, taking up a lot of space. We'll do one more like that. We'll sink down into goddess pose. We'll let our energy sort of build. Maybe on the inhale in the goddess pose, you think of something you don't like. And on the exhale, in the 5-pointed star, just imagine it being released or disappearing, going away forever. And we'll do one last one. Inhaling, sinking down, growing very rigid and stiff and strong in this pose. And 5-pointed star, releasing all that built up energy, relaxing. And we'll step the feet closer together. We'll take an inhale here, reaching the arms up over the head. Slowly exhale, they'll meet in front of the heart. We'll do more of those continuously. So doing several of those sort of snow angel arms. Just letting it be one continuous motion as the hands reach up and sink back down. Inhaling as you reach up, exhaling as the hands come back down. And we'll come to a stop. We'll come into chair pose. So our body will be shaped like a lightning bolt. So the hips will come back as if we're about to sit in a chair, and the arms will come up. Reaching up through the chest, reaching up through the head, letting the hips sink back. It might be helpful to lift the toes or to move the toes as though they feel like they could lift off the ground. From here, we'll bring the hands into prayer. We'll turn the body towards our left. Take another inhale back to the center, and exhale. We'll take those prayer hands again and turn to the opposite side. We'll come back to a neutral chair pose. Arms straight up. And we'll work on a little bit of balance today in chair pose. So we'll take the left leg up off the mat. And there's the option to come into a figure 4 pose with the left leg in your chair pose. Or there's the option to bring the left leg to the back of the right knee. Toes can be on the ground or toes can be up off the mat. So there's 2 options to work with today. Or just a standard chair pose. It's always plenty of work. And we'll establish ourselves in some sort of balancing pose today. We'll take a nice big inhale. And on the exhale, lifting that left leg back up into the air. And placing it back on the ground. Back into chair pose. Breath in, breath out. And now working with the right leg, either taking one knee to the other knee, or coming into a figure 4 pose with that right leg. Establishing ourselves in whatever pose we pick. Breath in, breath out. Lifting the upper body, lifting that leg back up off the mat. Allowing it to drop back down. Coming back into chair pose one last time. And coming into a forward fold. Stepping the legs wider apart. Maybe you put a bend in the knees. You can bring the hands to the hips, or you can interlace fingers or grab opposite elbows behind yourself. And from here, we just want to release the muscles in the neck and the shoulders and the head. and in the face. So seeing if you can let go of the jaw. Sticking the tongue out, moving the jaw around. You may be finding some motion in the neck and in the head. And we'll slowly bring the hands to the hips. We'll come to a flat back. And we'll stand ourselves all the way up. And if you're somewhere where you have some space against the wall, now's a good opportunity to use it to help yourself balance. So from a standing position, we'll come into airplane pose. So pressing into the right foot, and just testing what it feels like to balance only on that foot before coming all the way up. We'll bring the foot up and we'll send the left foot back. We'll send the arms back. And we'll send the head and the torso forward. So again, maybe you step that back foot onto a wall, like I'm doing. And it'll not only hold you up, but it'll give you a really good sense of what muscles you can use to hold yourself up without the wall next time. We'll take a breath in. We'll bring that leg forward, hug it in, and drop it back onto the mat softly. And we'll press down with the left leg now, and we're balancing the right leg off of the mat. So sending the leg back and sending the arms back while the head and the torso come forward. Maybe stepping onto a wall. You have one available. Eventually, bringing the right leg forward, hugging it in, and sending it back down towards the mat. Bring the hands to the hips here. Your standing position. And we'll wrap the thumbs around the back. And we'll just do some searching around with our thumbs. We're searching for our sacrum, so the base of our spine. And if you're unfamiliar with that term or where that body part might be, search around with your thumbs until you find a spot where they feel like they fit nicely and feel good. So we're all sort of just searching for a sweet spot in our low back. And try to find a spot where you can sort of settle in and be still with your thumbs and apply pressure. And you can always stop if you experience any pain or if it isn't comfortable. Once you're there, once you found a nice spot in your back to keep your thumbs, it should be symmetrical. Once you're there, we'll start to lift up through the head and through the chest. We'll draw the shoulders and the elbows back. And we'll start to press the elbows really close together, almost like they could touch. So we're going for a back bend here. If it feels good, you can go further with your back bend. You can let your head start to drop backwards. You can really press your chest forward. We'll take one last big inhale, wherever you are in this pose. And on the exhale, we'll start to release one arm at a time. And we'll find our way all the way back down into downward facing dog. One last time. pressing into the hands and pressing the hips up and back. We'll take a big inhale. We'll come way up onto our tippy toes. And then we exhale. We'll send the heels down towards the earth. Inhale, up on the toes. Exhale. Heels come back down. And we'll do one last one. Big inhale, up on our toes, and on the exhale, the heels press towards the ground. And we'll bring our knees down. We'll come into child's pose. Breathing in child's pose, letting the torso fill up with air, and breathing out. We'll start to make our way onto the back. And once we're there, hugging the knees in, and maybe rocking back and forth. Letting the ground press into the back. Eventually letting the arms fall out to either side. We'll take the right leg and cross it over the left. And if that doesn't feel good, you can come into a figure 4 pose with the right leg over the left. We'll allow the legs to drop over to our left side while the head drops over to the right. We'll bring our legs back up, using our hands to help us if we need to, and switching the cross of the legs, or coming to figure 4 on the opposite side. Left leg over right leg. We'll let the legs drop over to the right, and the head roll over to the left. And bringing the legs back up. We'll allow everything to release. And we'll come into a full body stretch, flat on the mat. Reaching out through the hands, reaching out through the feet. Breathing in, letting the body fill with air, and breathing out, letting the body empty of air. We'll come into Happy Baby before we wrap things up. We'll do just half Happy Baby on the left side, holding the left foot for a few breaths. We'll come into Happy Baby on the right side, holding the right foot for a few breaths. eventually full, just regular, happy baby. We'll grab the bottoms of the feet or the backs of the thighs, backs of the knees. Eventually sending the legs straight up into the air. And allowing them to drop all the way down. And the final pose, corpse pose. Relaxing everything onto the mat. Taking a moment to grab any cushion or pillow that you might want. And now it's a great opportunity to see if we can let go of everything we just did. And we were working very hard, trying to match our level of ease and relaxation with our level of hard work before. And making sure to use these last few moments to keep our minds focused on the present. Just noticing if your mind starts planning or wandering off with some other thoughts, or thinking about something that already happened. And just gently reminding yourself to be present, stay here. And slowly getting back up, bringing energy and sensation back into your body. Getting up in stages, taking as long as you need to open your eyes and sit up. We'll do one more last check-in with our body, our mind, and our attitude today. Just noticing how we feel this morning, noticing what's going on in our lives, what's going on in our minds, what we feel like. And noticing if it's any different than it was at the beginning of practice. Or if there's anything new at the forefront of your mind that you can take into life now. And we'll bring our hands in front of our hearts, and we'll just take a moment to focus ourselves on gratitude. Just be thankful for everything we are and everything around us and each other. Namaste means that the light in me honors the light in you. So I'd like to say namaste to anybody watching right now. And thank you for joining me this morning. If you have questions or comments or something you'd like to discuss, feel free to message me, contact me directly, or leave comments in the comments section for the video. And thank you for joining, and if you want to see me again, see the class again, take the class again, I'll be here Thursday of next week. So everyone have a pleasant day. Goodbye.